Well, thank you for coming back for part two. As promised, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about my book, Luck, which is my fifth novel. You can find my first, no, excuse me, it's my sixth novel. I've published four, which are all available on Amazon, and my fifth is with a publisher waiting for their feedback. So this is number six that I'm writing currently. And I was just starting to tell you a little bit about how to hook a publisher and, of course, a reader with your first few chapters. Because even when you've done the hard work of getting a publisher to take you on and say yes to your manuscript, and your book's been edited and published and it's sitting on the shelves, you still need to convince each individual reader to pick up your book and buy it. And those first few chapters are key. I've actually been having a look online. There's a bunch of information now for writers that various schools of writing have put together and shared as resources. So see what you think about some of these. I was looking at one that was compiling what they argue are first chapter mistakes. And one of the mistakes that was mentioned, that the trap we could fall into when we're writing our first chapter, is starting too early. Now, I wonder if you've heard of this or wonder what you think about this. So this is the concept that really, to get the reader involved right away with the action and with your characters, you don't want to have too much at the beginning of just the everyday, the rather mundane or humdrum life of your characters. You want quite quickly stuff to be happening that's unusual. Okay, if you think about a movie, they are the masters of this. Think of a Hollywood blockbuster. Typically that opening scene will be just a crescendo of action. There's nothing humdrum about it. This is not just the everyday life of these characters. This is not just a window into a very calm period in this fictional world that's being created. Right at the very beginning, typically, there will be surprises, disappointments, conflict, perhaps a car chase. So the characters, right from the beginning, are living through something that they were not expecting. And we should try to emulate that in our books. That's what I would argue. So make sure that you as the writer are clear what day-to-day life would look like for your characters, but you don't have to be describing that for a very long right at the beginning. You can always come back and let that unfold afterwards. You can, play around with the timeline in your book and jump back and forth. So this concept of starting too early, how do you know when you've done that? What's argued on this particular writing school is they say this is, you'll notice that you've done this if the story begins too far in the past before the main conflict is actually happening. You may also get a sense as you read back your first chapter that there's not enough focus, there's not enough direction. Your reader is not clear why you're telling them these things, and you never want the reader to feel like that. The reader should always feel, if you can possibly do it, you want them to feel they just cannot put your book down. They have to know what happens next. I think for me, the book that really captured that, and I just wish I wrote it myself, was The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. That is, I think, a brilliantly written book. The plot is just second to none. It never lets up. Every time you turn a page, something else is happening and the suspense is built beautifully. So if you want to analyze a bestseller and try to understand how the writer achieved that, I would recommend looking again at The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. He just pulled it off very, very well. Other things that are warned against by writing schools are think about your tone and think about your writer's voice. If you establish that poorly, you may lose the reader in those vital first few chapters. As a rule of thumb, most readers would give about 100 pages of, bearing with it. If they pick up a new book, particularly if it's a writer they're not familiar with, they might read about 100 pages before they put the book aside and think it's not for me. I'm not going to buy that one. for some readers, they won't be that forgiving because they don't have time. They're busy people. They may have abandoned your book sooner. So really, the first few pages, you need to get them feeling excited. Give them that promise that, yes, this will be a great book. They will be glad that they read it. You do want people to finish your book because, unfortunately, if they end up abandoning the book, even if they've bought it, yes, you've got the sale of that particular reader, but they won't recommend your book. They may even tell other people, advise other readers, don't bother to read that one. And that would be heartbreaking because you've put in so much work. You want people to wholeheartedly recommend your book and get more readers that way. Well, stay tuned for part 3 because I would love to read you a short extract from my 6th novel, Luck. I would like to tell you a little bit about how I came up with these characters and want to share with you my personal way of creating really interesting, exciting and engaging plot, putting those characters through their paces. And I hope you can join me.